In December 1977, Menachem began paid a return visit to Egypt and held further discussions with President Sadat in Cairo on issues related to peace. Over the following year, the two sides engaged in multiple high-level contacts, but due to deep disagreements, almost all negotiations failed to achieve substantive progress. The United States consistently believed that the Middle East peace process had to be led by Washington. In order to seize this rare opportunity for peace, President Jimmy Carter decided to invite Sadat and begin to Camp David, near Washington, D.C., for a trilateral summit involving the United States, Egypt, and Israel. Preparations before the summit. Before departing, Sadat convened Egypt's top leadership to discuss negotiation strategies and issued a statement declaring that Egypt insisted on a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution and rejected any temporary, phased, partial, or purely bilateral peace arrangement. Begin, meanwhile, stated that he did not hold high expectations for the Camp David talks. However, at this time, a strong peace movement emerged within Israel, demanding that the government change its hardline position. March 1978, around 350 reserve officers jointly wrote to Begin, urging him to accept the Land for Peace formula. Large demonstrations were organized, with crowds chanting "Peace Now." September, just before the summit, more than 100,000 people again took to the streets, demanding that the government show sincerity toward peace. This movement had a noticeable impact on Begin's attitude. White heavy checkmark the difficult Camp David negotiations. On September 6, 1978, the leaders of the three countries officially began talks at Camp David in Maryland. During the negotiations, Egypt and Israel clashed sharply, with heated disputes that repeatedly pushed the talks to the brink of collapse. The core disputes centered on three issues. 1. Scope of the solution. Egypt. The entire Middle East issue must be resolved. Israel. Deal with the Sinai issue first, then discuss Palestine. 2. The Palestinian question. Egypt. Israel must end its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and recognize Palestinian national self-determination and statehood. Israel strongly opposed the creation of a Palestinian state and refused to withdraw from the West Bank and Gaza. 3. The Sinai Peninsula. Egypt insisted on full sovereignty and demanded complete Israeli withdrawal. Israel refused to dismantle settlements and wanted to retain control of Sinai airfields for 3 to 5 years. The negotiations reached a deadlock. At one point, Sadat decided to terminate the talks and was preparing to leave. Begin also declared that he could not continue. This meant that the hard-won chance for peace was on the verge of collapse. Carter's critical mediation. President Carter intervened with unprecedented seriousness, persuading Sadat to stay and applying pressure on Begin. With additional persuasion from Israeli Foreign Minister Moshe Dayan and Defense Minister Ezer Weizman, Begin finally made concessions on the settlement issue. The negotiations began to turn around. White heavy checkmark a historic breakthrough, the agreement. After 13 days of difficult negotiations, the three parties finally reached an agreement on September 18, 1978. That evening, under Carter's auspices, Sadat and Begin signed 2 documents at the White House, the famous Camp David Accords. The accords consisted of 2 parts. Framework for peace in the Middle East. Key points included: disputes would be resolved based on UN Security Council Resolution 242. All states had the right to live in peace within secure and recognized boundaries. A transitional self-governing authority would be established in the West Bank and Gaza for no more than 5 years. The final status of the West Bank and Gaza must be determined before the transition ended. Framework for the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty. Major provisions included: Israel would fully withdraw and dismantle its military facilities in the Sinai Peninsula. Sinai would be returned to Egypt, and Israeli airfields would be limited to civilian use. The Gulf of Suez, the Suez Canal, and the Gulf of Aqaba would be open to Israeli shipping. Diplomatic, economic, and cultural relations would be established between the two countries. White heavy checkmark ratification and international response. On September 26, 1978, the Israeli Knesset approved the accords by a vote of 84 to 19. On October 14, the Egyptian People's Assembly also approved them. Subsequently, 1978, Sadat and Begin jointly received the Nobel Peace Prize. March 26, 1979, Egypt and Israel formally signed the peace treaty, ending the state of war. White heavy checkmark implementation of the treaty and Israeli withdrawal from Sinai. Israel withdrew from Sinai in phases as stipulated. 1979 to 1980, 5 withdrawals, returning 2/3 of the territory. 1982, complete withdrawal, including the forced evacuation of the Yamit settlement. Egypt regained full sovereignty. However, the dispute over the Taba area was not resolved until 1986. The Palestinian issue, virtually no progress. Egypt insisted that autonomy must include land and sovereignty. Israel insisted on only administrative autonomy for residents and excluded Jerusalem from negotiations. The two sides repeatedly broke off talks. After Israel declared Jerusalem its eternal capital in 1980, Egypt suspended the negotiations. Israel's subsequent legal annexation of the Golan Heights further deepened divisions, warning Egypt's heavy price, isolation in the Arab world. Because Egypt made peace with Israel alone, the Arab world imposed harsh sanctions. 17 Arab states severed diplomatic relations with Egypt. The Arab League suspended Egypt and relocated its headquarters from Cairo. Strong domestic opposition from leftists and Islamists. 2 foreign ministers resigned in protest. Religious extremist groups labeled Sadat a traitor to Islam. The assassination of Sadat. On October 6, 1981, during a military parade, members of an extremist group hurled grenades at the reviewing stand and opened fire. Sadat was struck by multiple bullets, fatally wounded, and died 2 hours later. This was the price he paid for peace. Warning: Israel also faced intense internal opposition. Far-right groups, religious nationalists, and hardliners within the Likud party strongly opposed the accords. During the Knesset vote, about 1/3 of Likud members abstained or voted against it. Some extremist lawmakers even left the party to form new factions. Direct its significance and impact. The Egypt-Israel peace treaty was the first peace agreement between Israel and an Arab country, ending more than 3 decades of war and providing a framework for future Middle East peace efforts. However, it also resulted in deep divisions within the Arab world. Egypt's long-term suspension from the Arab League. Failure to resolve the Palestinian issue. A rise in extremism. Sadat paying with his life.